Now that we know about the Autopen, and now that we know about the powerful decisions that unelected people from the Obama administration serving in the serving in the Biden administration were doing with the executive orders that a president we now know for a fact clearly didn't always understand what was going on around him. You went back through a number of the executive orders. So share with our viewers some of the things that you shared with the committee so that we can learn a little bit more about this excellent investigation.
I appreciate that. Thank you. And it is really important because if you have people acting in persona presidente, right? They're acting on behalf of the president. I mean, it's fraud, it's deception, it's impersonation of the president, and that's not how our country could ever function. So what we wanted to do is we wanted to find some of these executive orders and look for any evidence of Biden speaking about it in first person. Talking on Air Force One, talking to the media at an event, right? So he was doing some campaign events and bringing it up. Not everyone makes the grandiose gestures of executive orders that President Trump does, where he holds them up and he's got the audience there. But you would think an executive order as big as I banned the export of liquid natural gas, you would think he would mention it once or twice. And so we found 8 instances where there is absolutely no moment that the president spoke about it in first person. So we conclude the president had no idea these were even done, and we are asking if there's evidence, can you determine whether or not Joe Biden directed these, require them, called for them, was aware of them, or was this just all staff taking leniencies?
So I assume, based on your testimony on Wednesday, that you're working with Republicans in Congress to try to get to the bottom of this. Have they been responsive? Have they shown the interest in this scandal that
they have,
you
and that's why
expect?
It was great to see Chairman Comer there yesterday and have this exchange, because we're focusing just on energy executive orders and energy and climate ones, and there are only 8. But there are thousands of executive orders that other folks in their interest should be looking at, right? There were lots of executive orders that we have no evidence at all if the president was aware of it. I even did the math. Someone asked me once if we were looking at the pardons, and I said, no, I stay in my wheelhouse, which is energy. But I'll tell you this on pardons. Of the 8,300 or so pardons Joe Biden gave, right, if I had Chris Bedford's file before me and saying he's up for a pardon, how much time would I legitimately need to give to that file to determine if you get a pardon? If I'm going to be really, really cheap and say 2 minutes maximum, well, 2 minutes times 8,000 pardons is a long, long, long time for Joe Biden. It's not humanly possible for Joe Biden to have looked at 8,000 pardons.
Considering how many hours he was up in a day. Now.
Exactly. So you add up the pardons, you add up all the executive orders on energy, you add up a lot of these decisions, and you realize Joe Biden was in Delaware every Friday from noon until Monday. How in the hell did he make any of these decisions? And now you realize he probably did not.
No, he must not have, and that's a great point to make as well. And I know that some reporters now are racing other nonprofits and oversight staff and looking at these different executive orders and which ones outside of the energy wheelhouse made sense. What were some of the most impactful? And most of them were pretty negative, but not all of them. But what were some of the most negatively impactful executive orders the president put out, that these people put out from the White House, and the effect that they had on the American energy independence and the American energy economy and small businesses and workers?
Yeah, the export natural gas ban was the biggest.
People lost their livelihoods.
It also really contributed to the ongoing war in Russia-Ukraine. When we stopped exporting liquid natural gas, the rest of the world bought Russian gas, but they bought it through intermediaries, whether it was the Turks, whether it was the Egyptians, I believe. A lot of countries just didn't follow the sanctions on Russian oil and gas, and they acted as intermediaries. And so the French and the Italians and the Brits and everyone just bought it through an intermediary. And so here we are saying we have to stop Putin's war, and yet his executive order is funding the war. It also bankrupted many, many small companies and small businesses when you are exporting natural gas for a living, and then tomorrow an executive order comes out and says that's now illegal. The ban on offshore drilling, 500 and something million acres of land taken of shore taken offline, right? The president just signed a blanket. You can no longer look for oil or gas in this area.
And these things are easy to do, but very difficult to undo, right?
Oh, yeah. And that's the problem with energy, and that's why, the best example of that, Chris, it's a great point, egg prices. How come egg prices haven't come down? They're down, but it did take 4 or 5 months, right? The egg prices we were feeling in January is the trickle of Joe Biden's energy policies, punitive policies, which made life expensive starting in 2021. Everything, it caught up to us, and now it's reversing, but it's going to take some time to get this industry back online.
And that's why prophetic people like you raise their own chickens and get their own eggs.
Keep us away from the government system. It was just infuriating the way that this happened. And I like process crimes. A lot of folks in D.C. like process issues. I often think of the Ray FBI when they said, let's make a list of every Catholic who goes to Latin Mass, right? There's a process. People got in a room, they sent like evites, like, hey, Chris, can you join us at 3 o'clock? We're going to. The processes that I think needs to be investigated. Who were these people? Who made this decision? Well, if you're going to sign Autopen, this is a process crime, right? That machine is not just sitting there in the lobby for anyone to go up to. You got to get a key. You got to get permission. There are staff secretaries. We know a lot of White House personnel who have these roles. A lot of people have to be signed off. A lot of machinations happen when you're going to put the president's signature on a document. None of those people have the luxury of hiding behind executive privilege, because these are alleged crimes. And just because you work for the president, you don't have the luxury of saying, I'm not going to appear before Congress. Sadly, I'll finish with this. The Biden administration set this precedent as well when they said, now, Peter Navarro, we think you're guilty of a crime. And they took him out of Reagan Airport in shackles, right? He tried to claim executive privilege. They threw Steve Bannon in jail. He tried to claim executive privilege. So the Biden administration has set a lot of evil precedents. But I'm going to use those precedents to go after this, because if the corruption doesn't stop, we are not going to make it as a country.
Yeah, I think that's completely right. I want to play a clip right now of an interesting interaction that you had as this hearing was nearly concluded.
The gentleman goes around, comes around.
The gentleman's time has expired.
Chairwoman, okay.
I now recognize Mr. Jack from Georgia for 5 minutes.
I just want to make clear.
Thank you,
now,
Madam
what goes
Chair,
around can come around.
Thank you, Madam.
I apologize for the rare point of order. I wasn't able to ask Mr. Kassar before he ran out the room, but he was looking at the witnesses, talking about a murderer, and said, what goes around comes around. And I don't know what that comment meant. I don't have the luxury of Capitol Hill police to protect me. In the climate space, we got a lot of death threats. We got a lot of hate. The climate environmental groups, the original violence. I just don't know what goes around comes around meant.
Mr. Turner, we'll address you feeling threatened as soon as the hearing is ended. Thank you very much.
Thank you, ma'am.
Yep.
Well, that was something else, Daniel. That was wild to see. You seemingly threatened with murder and on the witness stand, and not just like some Long Island Republican telling someone he's going to break him like a girl and throw him over the balcony. This was on camera and everybody knew it.
Yeah.
So what was going on and what was going through your head, and how does this fit in with the kind of violence that you have to experience all the time anyways?
I get a lot of hate mail and death threats because the eco-left are the original political violence, right? You go back to the spiking trees back in the 80s because of the spotted owl, right? The burning down of ski resorts. The eco-left has a long history in political violence. So political violence directed towards me is kind of not new. But it was odd to see it from a member of Congress so flippant. He was talking about this horrible mass murder in his city of San Antonio, and then saying what goes around comes around. And he's doing it in this context of you need to stop punishing nonprofits because otherwise you're going to be mass murdered next. It was so bizarre, and I wasn't going to let it go. I actually got a little, not scolded, but you're not supposed to interrupt hearings, right? They're very formal. But I was like, I'm not going to sit here and have some little congressman, write a check he's not going to cash, right? Like I am not going to be threatened by a member of Congress who's got all this bravado trying to intimidate me. I thought it was really inappropriate, really offensive. He scurried out of the room like a little weasel. I doubt I'll ever hear from him again, but I'm glad I called him out.
Yeah, I'm glad too. That kind of behavior is absolutely atrocious, and the casual references to violence against the right, well, violence against the right is happening all the time. Violence against Americans, violence against Christians, violence against, like you mentioned previously, people who work in natural resources is excused and sometimes promoted. And they also try to frame you as someone who is just fighting for big oil, but that's not who Power of the Future fights for. ExxonMobil and these other BP, they have their own people who they work with. The folks they're not going out of business when an LNG export ban comes into place. The little guys seem to be the ones going into business. The kind of guys you saw in the movie Armageddon, one of America's greatest movies of all time. These are the cowboys out there who are doing the work, trying to bring us the energy. Tell us a little bit about who you represent and also where people can follow and find your work, this important work that you're doing.
Thank you. You can find everything on powerofthefuture.com, or people can email me, daniel@powerofthefuture.com. But yeah, it's those small oil and gas and coal and small independent businesses, small family businesses. The vast majority of our resources come from small private family-owned businesses. Upwards of 80% of our oil comes from independents. They don't come from the majors. And so you get this kind of like ugly collaboration, which we've seen a lot in our American history. We saw it the best during COVID, this evil collaboration of big government and big business to shut out little guys, right? You get your waiver to keep your store open, but mom and pop groceries have to close up shop, and then surprise, they go out of business. We see this very, very often, and the oil and gas and the fossil fuel business is absolutely no different. And we fight for those small businesses across rural America who don't always have an advocate and don't always have someone on their side. And so I'm proud of my organization and the work we're doing on their behalf.
Did you get any $2 billion free money grants from the Biden administration to do this important work?
I had one exchange with the congressman where I tried to explain how difficult it is to spend that much money. I mean, it really, really is very difficult to spend ethically. I did throw in the word ethically. I'll
just take a portion of it.
Yeah.
I'll just take a little. I just need a little bit. Well, Daniel Turner with Power of the Future, thank you so much for coming back on the show. We'll see you again soon.
Thank you.